So today's event has been organised as part of our UN Ocean Decade endorsed project at the IES, which is called Turning the Tide: Systems Thinking for a Sustainable Ocean. We're really pleased to be hosting it today in collaboration with Ocean Partnerships. And so we're joined by Chrissy and Phil, who are on the meeting from their team. Um, for people who don't know, Ocean Partnerships is a growing networking opportunity for those interested in the marine environment. They aim to connect people and foster collaborations by offering free monthly speed networking events, very similar to what we're running today, where people join and have a talk at the start and then have the opportunity to go into breakout rooms and have discussion. Okay, so in today's session, we'll be running it to a similar format, and we are delighted to have a speaker with us today, Dr. Catherine Fredera. She is a principal consultant at Powell Marine Consulting and has a wealth of experience in the sector, across the marine sector. And yeah, they're going to be talking to you about some of their work in the sector today. So as I mentioned, we'll be recording up until Catherine's talk, and then after that I'll be turning the recording off just to facilitate some discussions throughout the session today. So yeah, thank you so much to everyone for joining, and I'll hand over to Catherine now.
Thanks, Jo. Nice to see you all, some familiar faces, which is always nice to see. I'm going to share my slides. I'm literally going to talk for like 10 minutes because this is more about you all talking to each other than listening to me. But I thought it's worth just framing our session. So hopefully you can see all of that. Slides coming up okay? You can just see the slides? Just checking. Yep. Good. Cool. Okay, so what are we doing today? We're doing some speed networking, and we're looking across disciplines and sectors to solve environmental challenges. And this basically comes about from, I guess, my career working in the public sector, the private sector, a bit of academia as well. And in all of these different roles, I've learned different things, and I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of different people, not just within whatever sector or department I'm working in, but also, neighboring teams from other places as well. And I've always found that the conversations I have with people that aren't working along the same track as me have been the most valuable for innovation and changing my thinking on things. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So if I can go on to the next slide, which I can. So we've started using this word transdisciplinarity, which sounds really big and fancy, but essentially, for me, it's a big word which means talking to other people, working with other people. And what do we mean by this? Well, we have different sectors and we have different disciplines. So this is all about, as I say, working with people outside of your specific discipline or your specific sector. And I'll get into disciplines and sectors shortly after this little intro. And this is really important, though, because it allows us to draw on this information and expertise that we literally can't fit in our own heads. We can't know everything. And I think that's kind of key to where I'm coming from with this, is rather than me trying to learn absolutely everything there is to know about how to, consent an offshore wind farm, it's more about learning where the people are that have the information that I don't have, so that we can all work together, bring our own expertise in, and start to kind of build that picture up, to help work on these complex problems and allow us to just focus on what we feel is really important, whilst also being open to innovation that comes from other perspectives. So I'm going to use an example of offshore wind because kind of marine management is kind of too big, although it can be applied at this level as well. So who works in offshore wind? Well, I've got a list here, and I've probably missed a whole load of people off. But we've got the engineers that make, that design the turbines. We've got the planners that both help to inform those consents and do the kind of regulatory bit. Marine scientists are very valuable, EIA professionals that are writing the assessment documents. And then we've got other sectors as well, like the accountants, the risk managers, the project managers, the communications managers, the lawyers. All of these people are working in this wider sector of offshore wind. And if we're working in a way where we're not taking into consideration these other people's views, we're going to give ourselves a much harder time than we need to. Taking the example of, we can have design solutions, but if the accountants are saying the money won't stretch, there's not really that much point in us pursuing those particular solutions. So having earlier conversations and learning where everybody's coming from allows us to work together as kind of this big transdisciplinary team. But it's not just kind of different disciplines, we have different sectors as well. So we have the developers and the consultants from the private sector doing one thing, and looking at things very much from that development perspective, particularly for the developer companies. They have shareholders as well whose considerations they need to take into to keep in mind. We have the public sector, the regulators and the policymakers. We have a lot of advisors from the NGO community, conservation bodies, and those people. And we have the research community within academia as well. And all of these are working essentially on the same problems, but from different perspectives in different ways. And I feel that particularly looking across sectors, we get a much better idea of how people are working and why we're potentially getting the same answers to the same problems, which can sometimes be a bit frustrating. So go on to kind of more about the kind of networking opportunity here. What can we learn from others? Well, we can learn what's possible. So for instance, the environmental impact compensation is only feasible if it's within engineering practicalities. Engineering solutions are only feasible within economic constraints. And research impact is greatly increased if it aligns with policy ambitions. It's also much more likely to get funded if your research ambitions align with a big policy direction. And also, if we're thinking about kind of more on the lines of consenting projects, planning objections are minimized through good design and understanding the relevant environmental baselines. And they're also minimized through considering community interests earlier in the process. Again, it all comes back down to talking to people. I've got 2 more slides, which is fine because I'm rattling through, which gives us a lot of time to talk. What can we learn from others? We can learn, as I say, what's possible, what's not possible, as well as what's possible. And I think this is key for me. It's when we're having conversations across disciplines and across sectors, if there's something that from our perspective isn't possible, we need to explain why that is. We can't fund this project because of XYZ. We can't allow you to build in this way because from an environmental perspective, these outcomes would be impossible to live with. This allows us to both kind of challenge our assumptions from other disciplines, but also allows us to kind of practice the way we communicate and the way that we check our own assumptions that, yeah, well, I know that this thing is impossible. Why is the other discipline saying that we should do it? I've got some kind of examples here of very generic comments, and I don't know if there are any lawyers in the room, and I'm apologizing if there are, but the lawyers always make things difficult. It's a common line I've heard throughout my career. Lawyers are just there to make things difficult. No, they're not. They have their own set of norms and perspectives that mean that they have to do things the way that they do them, and there's good reason for that. The engineers say we can't move turbines. It's not that easy to move a offshore wind turbine 50 meters to the left or right. There's a lot of engineering that needs to be considered there. And on the other side, the marine scientists are saying we can't build in this area. It'd be perfect for engineering. So why are they saying we can't do it? Well, there's a really valuable habitat there. Well, these are very basic examples. Everything's a lot more nuanced than that. But it's just to kind of get into this idea that if we're saying, no, we can't do something from our perspective, explaining why that is really helps with that kind of collaboration and problem solving to get over these challenges, because we are all working towards the same goal of net zero and helping build out alternative energy or whatever field related that you're working in. So just to kind of make the most, I guess, of the time that we have here today and going forward as well into future conversations, how do we make the most of cross-discipline networking? It's a good idea to introduce yourself. I know when I came on this call today, even with colleagues from the IES, there were some people I didn't know. I didn't introduce myself. We should do that. Where do you work? It's also, I think, in times like this, when we do have this time just to kind of step back and think about networking with other people, think about why you've chosen the career path you have and communicate that in a way that you feel comfortable with. What drives you? Is it protecting the marine environment? Is it delivering design solutions, solving complex policy problems? Understanding that when you're talking to other people allows you to see what perspective you're coming from and see if there's any common ground, or see if there's anywhere where their view is completely different from yours. And trying to understand why that is can give you that new perspective. What is your role in marine management, offshore development? What is it that you do? And all of this, it's worth reflecting back and challenging your own views about other disciplines. Do you think that, for instance, and I'm picking on lawyers again, which is not good. Do you think that lawyers are just there to make things difficult? Do you think that the engineers are too rigid in their thinking? How can we challenge those views and see that they, like you, are just trying to do the job that they're doing as well as they possibly can do? And that's all I've got. I guess I'm handing back to Joe. I'll leave that slide up just while we switch over.